Questions remain about the Brooklyn Day event mass shooting, what we've learned about the Safe Streets workers who were there that day, and the action one lawmaker is calling for to address these crimes. Then look at this video of a playground up in flames. We're talking to investigators to see if this is connected to 2 other recent playground fires.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 4.
Fox 45 News is keeping an eye on the weather and traffic conditions. This is a live look around Baltimore, Towson, and also Ocean City on the Eastern Shore as rush hour gets underway. Now, storms are popping up. Our chief meteorologist, Jonathan Myers, will update us with his moment-by-moment forecast coming up shortly.
We cannot remove the responsibility from those who actually pulled the trigger. We are going to do that work of going to see what agencies could have done and done differently.
Do you still believe that Safe Streets is effective?
We know Safe Streets is effective, right?
After this, how can you say that?
Well, I could say many things.
Well, this just in, Mayor Scott speaking out just moments ago about this weekend's mass shooting in South Baltimore. The mayor continuing to throw his full support behind the Safe Streets program. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. The mayor's comments come as Fox 45 News investigates what happened in the moments and hours leading up to Baltimore's largest single act of violence in recent memory. Here's the latest right now. A search for suspects is underway after 2 people were killed and 28 others were shot. Police have released video showing a young boy with what appears to be a gun at that block party. Police say he's a suspect.
We know Safe Streets workers were at the scene earlier in the day attempting to break up an incident. We are also told Baltimore police were only made aware of the event just hours before. Next week, City Council will summon public safety leaders to a hearing into these questions.
Is that acceptable for BPD not to do something when they knew about this at least an hour and a half before something happened?
Absolutely unacceptable. If our department knew about it around 11 o'clock and this happened, a little after midnight, we had an hour and a half, 2 hours to figure out what we were going to do. Why did nothing happen?
Well, our reporters are standing by pushing for transparency and accountability.
Let's begin with Mackenzie Frost, who's in the studio right now with us. And Mackenzie, you're learning about policy changes now following the shooting?
Yeah, we've been asking the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement if some policies will be changing. And Monzi says that we know that there were Safe Streets workers at the Brooklyn Day event earlier in the afternoon. 4 workers showed up to respond to reports of several people who were there with guns. Now, those Safe Streets workers left. Monzi will not tell us what time those workers got to Brooklyn Day or what time they left the block party. But we know the violence interrupters didn't tell police about that potential threat. The Public Safety Agency says internal communication, the policy is now being reviewed. And I spoke with Public Safety Committee Chairman Mark Conway earlier today. He says he didn't know Safe Streets workers knew there were guns at the event during the day. The councilman says he recognizes Safe Streets need to maintain their community credibility. But next week during that hearing, he says he wants some answers.
That said, in an instance where we know that there are multiple guns at a 1,000-person event, it sort of begs the question, what can they do that reduces the risks to that event, and doesn't put them in the line of ruining their credibility? And unfortunately, I think in this instance, we weren't fully prepared for it. And unfortunately, a lot of people paid the price for it.
All right, Mackenzie, big question out of this. What about future funding for Safe Streets? With this communications breakdown, does the program need to be dismantled, really looked at?
That's a question that a lot of people, I'm sure, are asking themselves at home right now, and most likely will come up during the hearing next week. We know that it's unclear because just last week, the city's spending board approved multi-year contracts for the nonprofits running the program. I questioned Councilman Conway about what should happen next.
Is it appropriate to be handing out this much money to an organization that doesn't clearly have their organization in place?
I think that's an excellent question. I think I'd have to really begin to dig more into the full scale of what's going on with Safe Streets to answer that question more knowledgeably. They're not going to get everything right. I don't expect that, but I certainly expect them to be introspective and be changing and improving every time we realize that there's something to improve upon.
Now, we don't know when or really if Monsey will change its protocols when it comes to alerting the police or any other agency about a potential threat. I asked Monsey this morning if the policy will shift before this weekend, but so far we haven't gotten an answer. And I did question Mayor Brandon Scott about Safe Streets. I'll have his full response coming up at 5 o'clock. Mary and Kai.
Mackenzie,
thank you.
Well, new tonight, Maryland's Senate Minority Leader is calling for a special session in Annapolis to address gun violence. In the wake of 2 mass shootings this week, Senator Steve Hershey says Marylanders don't want to hear more condolences. They want to. Fox 45's Amy Simpson joins us live after questioning the Republican leader today. Amy?
Yeah, Mary, Senator Steve Hershey is renewing that push for 2 pieces of legislation that he says needs to be passed following those 2 mass shootings this week, both in South Baltimore and in Salisbury. Today, Senator Hershey told me that over the last 4 years, the Violent Firearms Offenders Act, which would put repeat criminals behind bars, only passed the state Senate twice, dying in committee 2 other times. And a bill that would make possession of a stolen firearm a felony here in Maryland, he says it never made it out of committee 4 years in a row.
But the fact that we can't even get these bills a vote in the Judicial Proceedings Committee is telling us that people don't want to fix these problems. The governor very easily can say, I want to see these 2 pieces of legislation on my desk. He's got that type of power in the state of Maryland when he's got control of both the House and the Senate to be able to make that kind of statement. And that's what I'm looking forward to hearing from the governor.
Now, this week, we've questioned some of Maryland's Democratic leadership about the possibility of a special session, how they've responded to those questions. That's coming up at 5. We're live in Baltimore. Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Amy, thank you. Meanwhile, as lawmakers in the state debate the measure, across the country, special sessions are combating some issues. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor looks into where the tool is currently being used and what changes those sessions have sparked. Rebecca?
In the last year alone, more states have gone back to work outside of their regular sessions than haven't. Sometimes they deliver change, sometimes they don't. Regardless, it's a time for lawmakers to get back to work and discuss new solutions.
In the weeks following, back to back to back mass shootings in Maryland. Some eyes now turning to Annapolis, watching and waiting to see if a special session will be called to address the tightening grip of gun violence on our state.
Voters and citizens want to have an answer to this problem. This has reached a level of crisis where Annapolis should come back into session and do something about it.
But so far, Fox 45's back-to-back-to-back emails to the governor's office going ignored this week. Fox 45 asking, will you call for a special session to address the issue? If not, what new actions will you take to prevent gun violence? So far, no response.
And there's no change coming under Westmore. There's no special session.
Meanwhile, special sessions are tackling issues elsewhere. Fox 45's research team finding in the last year alone, 30 out of 50 states have held a special or extraordinary session. For example, in Washington, lawmakers passing laws strengthening restrictions and penalties for illegal drug possessions, as well as establishing new treatment options for those struggling with addiction. In Pennsylvania, lawmakers extending the statute of limitations on sexual assault cases. In Idaho, lawmakers producing the largest tax cut in state history, while also increasing funding for education. And in South Carolina, lawmakers criminalizing fentanyl trafficking with added gun penalties. All solutions discussed and delivered outside of normal legislative sessions. This, as Maryland's capital remains closed for the summer.
They just don't want their summer vacation interrupted. That's what it comes down to, because there are things and actions they could consider taking on a variety of things.
Now, if no special session is called, Maryland lawmakers will have to wait until the next regular session to introduce new public safety measures, but that's about 6 months away. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Rebecca, thank you. Well, so far this year in Baltimore, both homicides and non-fatal shootings are behind where they were at this point last year. Yet we're seeing an increase in the number of young people involved in crime and violence, and there are calls for solutions.
I think they should do like a little more to keep the kids off the street. I would want the schools to be better for my nieces, but right now I'm not seeing that right now.
Well, coming up at 4:30, our Project Baltimore team will look into the intersection between education and violence in South Baltimore. You will also hear from the sheriff in Salisbury after a 14-year-old was killed Tuesday in another mass shooting.
Right now, we understand detectives with Baltimore County Police are on the scene of a shooting in Rosedale. Now, the crime scene is outside of an apartment off Kenwood Avenue that's not far from Shady Spring Elementary. Police say a man who was shot was rushed to the hospital. Fox 45 News will bring you more information as it becomes available. Be the first to know about breaking news by signing up for News on the Go. Go to foxbaltimore.com and click on Mobile Alert Sign Up under the Station tab.
Well, we're tracking a few showers and thunderstorms this afternoon. Most of them are beginning to diminish now. It's been kind of like a 2 to maybe say 4 or 5 o'clock time frame that we've been seeing these. Some better cells coming around Chestertown up toward Bel Air, but those are now diminishing, and also up and down 95. Most of those cells have pulsed down too, so that's some good news. But during the evening commute, there still could be a spot shower or storm through 5, 6, 7 o'clock. After about say 8, 9 o'clock, we drop down to around 80 degrees. And it looks like it calms down. But there could be some more coming forward tomorrow and better risks of showers and storms over the weekend. I'll let you know when your plans could be rained out. Coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
A string of city playgrounds burning down. Fox 45 News investigates it. They're connected.
The sentence is in for the man who shot and killed a Wicomico County Sheriff's deputy. We have the latest from court.
It may take 10 years almost to remove half of what you've been exposed to.
Half of the water we drink contains PFAS, commonly called forever chemicals, the concerns you should be aware of.
Fox 45 News, winner of 16 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
Around the state, the man found guilty of shooting and killing a Wicomico County Sheriff's deputy has learned his fate. Today, 22-year-old Austin Davidson was sentenced to life without parole. Prosecutors say he shot and killed Deputy First Class Glenn Hilliard last year. In court, the 22-year-old apologized to Hilliard's widow and family before the sentencing. Investigations by Fox 45 News has found the murder occurred while Davidson was out on probation for a robbery in the city. Experts have questioned why he was on the streets.
A search is underway after an officer in Annapolis was assaulted on the 4th of July. Police are looking for a man and a woman they say punched the officer and tried to take his weapon. Police say it happened as an officer tried to arrest a 22-year-old who ignored commands not to light fireworks. The officer is recovering from his injuries to his arm. If you know those two people pictured right there, you are asked to call police.
In Harford County, police say a 4th of July mass shooting in Edgewood was gang-related. 4 people were shot, including 2 teens. One of them walked into a Baltimore City hospital after the shooting. Investigators say the victims and suspects knew each other and are gang members. Police say the investigation continues.
Well, developing now, a fire damaged a playground in southeast Baltimore last night.
That's right. It's the 3rd fire in recent weeks, and tonight, some are questioning if they're connected.
Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live from Park Heights with more on what's going on. Maxine?
Well, Mary and Kai, take a look here. This is what remains at the now shuttered Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary Middle School playground. Burnt plastic slides, the smell still lingering in the air here. Police say the fire here on June 19th is being investigated as arson after it was found to be intentionally set with wooden pallets that you can still see here placed underneath the jungle gym. 2 days later, on June 21st, the Wilbur H. Playground fell victim to fire in West Baltimore. And just last night at Holabird Academy, a 3rd playground was struck by fire. Video shows the heavy black smoke and firefighters on scene there extinguishing the flames. For now, police say only that first fire in Park Heights right here is being investigated as arson.
Pallets was around the playground area. They was all round up in a line, you know what I'm saying? And they must have put the pallets there, set the pallets on fire, and they got to the plastic. Somebody jealous, mad, upset about something, you know? I mean, because it doesn't make no sense for them to do nothing like that, you know what I'm saying?
You can see those pallets he's talking about still here at the playground tonight. Police tell me detectives are actively investigating if all 3 incidents are linked together. If you have any information about any of these 3 playground fires, you're urged to call the Baltimore police. Reporting live in Park Heights, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Maxine, thank you. A consent decree has been approved for a Maryland pharmacy after it filled illegitimate prescriptions. According to the state's attorney's office, Beckman's Pharmacy in Cumberland disregarded signs. Prescriptions had been falsified, including improper dosages and combinations of drugs that could increase the chance of an overdose. The pharmacy will have to pay $120,000 in fines and is required to better identify red flags on prescriptions in the future.
All right, couple showers and thunderstorms left over after some of the rain that we saw here in the city. Down across the lower Delmarva, south of Denton, all the way down the ocean as you head toward Pocomoke City. But around here, there's not much in Baltimore. Again, we've kind of already seen some of our rain come through, and most of that pushing south and east. It's kind of splash and dash, as we say. It kind of comes in quickly and then moves out fairly quickly. And now on the radar sweep, things looking pretty good as we work our way through the next couple of hours. There could still be a spot shower or storm all the way through our sunset hours. Let's go ahead and pull up the national radar. You can actually get a better picture of what's going on here. There's a better risk of rain that's out to our west. You see Indianapolis all the way toward Lexington, Ohio Valley, and Atlanta. That is gradually moving eastbound, and that will lend to still some spot showers and storms next couple of afternoons until a bigger weather maker likely comes into Sunday. 87 right now. We did make it to 90, so that would be day 4, day 5 of 90 plus. So we're still in the midst of our heat wave. Winds out of the west southwest at 6 miles an hour, humidity of 59%, and our heat index still above 90 degrees. 87 degrees here in Baltimore. We're at 86 at Cockeysville, 93 at Westminster, so hot and humid there. 91 at Frederick, and still temperatures 85 to 90 or so on the eastern shore. Feels more like 100 plus. Look at you, Bel Air, 101. That's almost dangerously hot. Feels like 93 here in the city, 95 at Cockeysville, and in the upper 90s east of the bay. Humidity continues. There's a little system that's diminishing down to our south and southeast. It's a cold front that really has kind of lost most of its muster. Then there's another one that's out to the west, lending to some of the additional shower and storm chances. And then there's a bigger one that may actually make it toward us as we head into the day on Sunday. So way far away up in the upper Midwest and almost actually kind of more so Intermountain West, even Canada right now. That will gradually push south and east rather, and give us a risk of some showers and storms on Sunday. So I think if we're going to do some outdoor activities like heading to the pool or heading to maybe the Chesapeake Bay, I think your better chance is going to be here on Saturday. Let's go ahead and plan things out on the future scan through about 10:15. Most of the rain and thunderstorms, any of the isolated stuff is gone. But look, tomorrow afternoon, here we go again. Follow the clock. By about lunchtime, we're well into the 80s. It looks like we're back, yes, into the 90s tomorrow afternoon. And there are your spot storms by about 4:45 through 6 o'clock. Can kind of set your clock by it here. It's kind of like Florida weather, if you will. And then by about 8:45, most of that diminishing, and it just stays sticky. Let's go ahead and take a look at that 7-day forecast. I wish I had some better news next couple of days for those of you that want a little relief from the heat and humidity, but no, probably Friday and Saturday back in the low, at least 90s, maybe mid-90s. Some spot storms mainly in the afternoon here Friday as well as Saturday. Sunday, a better risk of some rain and thunderstorms and some clouds. That cold front's going to kind of lodge overhead with a high, there you go, finally 86. It's below the 90-degree mark. Maybe even a little bit of a relief in humidity. Still a couple of afternoon showers and storms, though, on Monday with a high 86, and then high temperatures getting back, likely above 90 again. So we could see another heat wave developing perhaps Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday heading into next week.
A big change starting today for anyone who listens to the police scanner in Baltimore City, while you'll now be hearing those radio transmissions in delay. And forever chemicals likely in the water you drink every day. The concerning information we're learning about PFAS in the nation's drinking water. In tonight's Health Watch, a concerning report about drinking water in our nation. A survey by the government has found roughly half of all faucets nationwide likely contain forever chemicals called PFAS. The synthetic compounds are near impossible to break down. They've been widely used in many non-stick cooking products, food packagings, and clothing. Over time, though, the chemicals have seeped into our drinking water.
They don't break down for a really long time. And in terms of some of these in the environment, it could be years to hundreds of years.
The U.S. Geological Survey examined water samples from taps in more than 700 different locations. They were taken between 2016 and 2021. The highest concentrations were found in the Great Plains, Great Lakes, and Eastern Seaboard and parts of California. Last year, the EPA issued health advisories saying the chemicals could be more dangerous than previously believed.
It can cause like cancer, it can cause immunity problems, it can cause liver problems, it can cause kidney problems.
There are more than 12,000 types of PFAS, but only about 30 can be detected in the lab. Still, officials hope the results will inspire people to treat their drinking water and have it tested. Fox 45 News continues our coverage on the mass shooting in South Baltimore. More than a dozen kids among the 28 people injured. We're looking into the rising violence we're seeing among children and the systems being called into question. And we're keeping an eye on pop-up storms as the evening commute continues. We have your evening forecast hour by hour.
Hi, U.S.-China, tit for tat. I'm Christine Frizzau in Washington with a look at how the challenges between the two countries might factor in to a high-level meeting this week.
Here is a live check on traffic and weather right now for your evening commute. It's hot and kind of humid out there outside today, but we are keeping an eye on your forecast.
Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers here with a quick check of our forecast. Jonathan?
Yeah, we've had some isolated storms. This has been the case. It's kind of like Florida weather over the past couple of days with the potential of some downpours. Most of those have now moved down towards the lower Delmarva, around Salisbury, as well as Seaford and Delaware. Had a whole bunch right along the 95 corridor between about, say, 2 and 4:30. Now those have diminished, so that's some good news. But we did have some downpours. You may have some wet roads residually to deal with. So your commuter forecast through 5 p.m., 89 degrees. Again, could see a chance of a shower storm. That actually goes through 6 and 7 o'clock as well. Temperature is going to be in the mid to upper 80s to right around 90 degrees. I'm going to let you know when we may finally fall out of the 90s. Yes, things may be cooling down, but it may come at the risk of rain. That's in my Weather Authority forecast.
We'll put the power of the Weather Authority Storm Center in your hands. Just go to the App Store and search WBFF to get started.
A 14-year-old is shot and killed in Salisbury, and now police are looking for the killer, who they say also shot 7 other people.
The shooting broke out during a block party, and today we're hearing from the local sheriff who says this never should have happened.
I don't think it's a firearm issue at all. I think it's the violence associated with society today because of a pure lack of accountability.
As we've reported, an 18-year-old and 20-year-old were shot and killed at a block party in Baltimore over the weekend. 28 others were shot. 15 of them were juveniles.
And we know the mayor has set into motion $1 million plan this summer to keep kids away from violence. But 6 weeks in, we're learning the city is scaling back the enforcement.
Now, critics say it's time to take a hard look at the mayor's youth summer plan.
There needs to be a real practical assessment about what young people in Baltimore City need, the direction that they need. And if there are those missing parents or those missing guardians, then figuring out where the juvenile system is failing, where we can help, where the school system can help, but also keeping in mind that, you know, the mayor is in charge of keeping the public peace.
This weekend's violence once again bringing the violence facing young people in Baltimore into the spotlight.
Project Baltimore's Chris Papps reports.
Two sisters, born and raised in South Baltimore, turning to their faith.
Yes, they are so inspiring.
In the wake of a horrific weekend. Baybrook Elementary Middle, the school they attended years ago. Now a somber scene.
We be singing to help the community to give them comfort and healing. Yep. Because they need what we singing.
Their former school has opened its doors to traumatized students and families who are seeking counseling after Sunday morning's mass shooting. 28 people were injured when gunfire erupted at an annual block party known as Brooklyn Day. 2 more people were killed. 18-year-old Aaliyah Gonzalez, who just graduated last month from Glen Burnie High School and was preparing to attend Anne Arundel Community College. 20-year-old Kylis Fagbimi was also killed. According to city schools, up until last year, Fagbimi attended Coppin Academy High School, a public charter school in West Baltimore, which was part of a recent Project Baltimore investigation. Coppin Academy is one of 23 Baltimore City public schools where 0 students among those who took the tests last year scored proficient in math.
I think they should do like a little more to keep the kids off the street.
Bless those who persecute you.
Sunday's shooting is the latest incident in what many consider a youth violence crisis in Baltimore City. Police believe at least 2 or 3 guns were used in the shooting. They have not named a suspect, but they say they do want to speak with this young person seen on social media pulling a gun out of a backpack at the party. Most of the victims were teenagers, age 17 or younger, school-age children, in a city seeing a spike in violence involving young suspects and victims.
I would want the schools to be better for my nieces, but right now, I'm not seeing that right now.
Project Baltimore looked at the schools in this area. Benjamin Franklin is the closest high school to where the shooting happened. Its 4-year graduation rate is 46%. The state average is 86%. At this school, fewer than 2% of the students tested scored proficient in math last year. About 8% tested proficient in English. Also at Benjamin Franklin High School, 81% of the students were considered chronically absent in 2022. The state average is about 31%. As far as elementary middle schools, the closest to the shooting is Baybrook. Last year, more than 400 students took the state test. 1.2% scored proficient in math. 4.7% scored proficient in English. Just about 54% of the students there last year were chronically absent. While we still don't know a motive, or even if the shooters were from Baltimore, the city's struggling school system has been criticized for failing to educate many students.
We cannot just be defenders of public education and they're not educating our children, especially African American children.
The Maryland chapter of the NAACP held a conference last month calling on school leaders to remedy the dreadful education circumstances for African American children in Maryland public schools, citing a number of issues, including the school-to-prison pipeline. The situation, according to the NAACP, is intolerable and getting worse.
Those are strong words. Absolutely, but what we're seeing is increasing salaries, we're increasing budgets. But the actual academic outcome is decreasing. And it's decreasing certainly more for African American students.
Oh, God, bless this suffering community. Bless this suffering country.
This community still has few answers. No arrests have been made. Just days ago, 30 people were shot, where these people now hold hands, praying for their neighborhood.
That I thought that I need.
We speak your peace over this place, Lord God.
I'm Chris Pabst.
We thank you, Lord God, for this community. Yes.
And this is Project Baltimore.
Now, Fox 45 is following the police investigation of the deadly Brooklyn mass shooting. Count on Fox 45 News for continuing coverage as we push for accountability, solutions, and transparency.
Beginning today, the Baltimore Police Department is now encrypting and delaying public access to its radio transmissions. Alexa Ashwell explains why the department says it's making this move and the concerns some have with the change.
He's shooting. It was just last week when a deadly officer-involved shooting unfolded live over the Baltimore Police Department's radio airwaves. Stop the crossfire now! Real-time access the public will no longer have. After years of talks, the Baltimore Police Department has officially switched to encrypted radio systems and devices. Instead of listening live, the public will only be able to access audio streams on a 15-minute delay and through the online platform Broadcastify. The Baltimore Police Department, writing in part, Broadcastify presents us with the opportunity to focus on officer safety. It also assists with interagency operability, since many neighboring agencies are already under encryption. Concerns center around transparency and right to real-time access, not only by the press, but general public as well. Number one female shot in the right leg. They need some units here. I need medics here. Just days ago, gunfire erupted within a crowd of hundreds of people, sending them running for their lives during the Brooklyn Day Festival in South Baltimore. 30 people were shot, 2 of those victims killed. The Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press here discussing the topic, writing in part, the debate over police radio encryption shows how technology is relevant to First Amendment questions. Former Baltimore Police Deputy Commissioner Jason Johnson weighing in.
But I think this policy does balance the need for openness and transparency with the need to protect victims, witnesses, police officers, and others that would be, potentially harmed and are potentially harmed by the real-time nature of police communications.
Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Taking a look now at the Fox 45 quad box. 2 firefighters killed in New Jersey overnight. They became trapped while fighting a large fire on a ship docked at Port Newark. Their identities have not been disclosed.
The company that tried to take a crew to the ruins of the Titanic is suspending all exploration missions. The CEO of OceanGate was on board that submersible that imploded last month. The Washington State company was founded in 2009.
A former aide to former president and aide to former President Trump pleads not guilty to the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. Walt Nauta was Trump's valet and is facing 6 federal charges. Prosecutors accuse him of conspiring with Trump to conceal the documents.
Canada's government will stop advertising on Facebook and Instagram. It comes after the government required tech companies to pay publishers for their content. Meta has decided to block news content from Canada.
Well, tonight, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is being given a difficult task to walk the fine line between competition and cooperation.
She's in China to meet with top officials there about issues that impact both countries, the economy and national security.
National correspondent Christine Frizzau now with the very latest.
In Beijing, a delicate dance with two partners still struggling to try to find the beat. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, the second top U.S. official to visit China in the last month, following Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit, part of a mission to find common ground. But it comes as a back-and-forth battle over technology and trade looms large. China just announcing export controls on gallium and germanium, two metals used to make semiconductors needed for military technology, cars, and mobile phones.
One of the Chinese favorite things to do is to signal their control, both internally and externally to the world, and to remind everyone that they're one of the major sources of those metals in particular.
Lawmakers on Capitol Hill have been warning for years of the threat of that reality.
Unfortunately, many of these chips are now being made in China. Many of them are being made in Taiwan. This is an issue of national security and significance.
The U.S. has also been cracking down on China, limiting its access to technology. The tariffs on Chinese goods put into place by former President Trump still in effect, to the detriment, some experts argue, of both sides.
We hear a whole bunch of things about how, well, if the Chinese do X, we should do Y. The thing to always remember in trade is that you don't make a trade. You don't buy or sell something unless you expect to benefit from the transaction.
A transaction overshadowed by China's holding of U.S. debt, a number now believed to be about $870 billion.
With all these realities in place, the White House has been downplaying the visit and what might come of it. The simple act of communication between the two countries, apparently the goal, with few concrete actions expected. In Washington, I'm Christine Frizzau.
President Biden is in South Carolina this afternoon. He's talking about his economic agenda and how that's creating manufacturing investments and good-paying jobs across the country. Biden says the Inflation Reduction Act continues to create changes.
Yesterday, we announced that since I took office, we've attracted $500 billion, $497 billion in private investment in American manufacturing, both here and around the world. It's historic. And it's Bidenomics in action. Instead of exporting jobs to cheaper labor costs, what we did for decades, we're creating jobs here and exporting American product, not jobs.
Well, President Biden also said his administration is working to increase production of raw materials here in the United States. In honor for Justice Thurgood Marshall at Baltimore City Hall, we'll take you to today's event. And the Independence Day celebration is going on. We'll take you to Bordy Vineyards in Maryland for what's happening tonight.
And the steam heat continues, so if you have an outdoor workout planned, do it with caution. Temperatures at 89 at 5 p.m. through about 6 will be at 87, 84 at 7. Only a very slim chance of rain to cool you down with a spot shower or storm. I'm going to let you know what the rain chances look like all the way into your weekend plans. That's at my Weather Authority forecast.
what a portrait. Take a look at this. A portrait of the late Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall joins Baltimore City Hall. That portrait can now be found at the Rotunda and will remain in place until June of next year. Justice Marshall was born in West Baltimore and served on the nation's highest court from 1967 until 1991. He was the first black member of the Supreme Court and was the architect of the landmark Brown versus Board of Education that he argued years before he became a justice at the Supreme Court. Well, the celebration isn't just over yet. Right now, the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra is putting on a Star-Spangled Celebration at Bordy Vineyards. Meteorologist Amy Arson was at the winery today for today's Hometown Hotspot.
We're here at Bordy Vineyards, where the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra is actually going to take over this patio space to kick off, or continue, I should say, their Star-Spangled series. I'm here with James Pritchard right now, who is telling us all about the music and the wine that you can enjoy if you come out to listen to the music this evening.
Indeed, yes. So on a day like today, when it's super hot and steamy, I recommend our spritz, which is slightly effervescent, super refreshing, and will basically be the perfect accompaniment to the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra here today.
Yeah, and they're going to take over, play some patriotic music. This is not the first time they've come to your space.
No, this is actually the third year in a row now, and our partnership is just in its infancy, and we're hoping to, for many years to come, be doing this out here at Bordy.
That's great, and why should people come out? They're seeing this space, plenty of room for everyone to join.
This is God's country. It's a beautiful setting, got the grapevines in full splendor right now, and it's just a great place, a great part of the Maryland.
Awesome. Well, we have all the information on our website if you want to come or check out Bordy Vineyards at any point this summer season. In Hydes, Maryland, Amy Arson, Fox 45 News.
All right, looks real nice, although, yeah, hot and humid, and some spot showers and thunderstorms left over across the lower eastern shore, more so the Delmarva down towards Salisbury. But here in Baltimore, had ours earlier on this afternoon. We're going to go ahead and zoom out. You can see there's actually some more that's out to our west, right around the Lexington, Indianapolis area, Nashville, all the way up to Hamilton, Ontario. And some of that is going to lend to increased chances of showers and storms during the afternoon, just like today, for tomorrow as well as into Saturday. Then we get a bigger system, I think, that comes for Sunday. Now, in terms of rainfall, today it was the upper eastern shore that got it worst. We got about 1 to 3 inches from Betterton all the way to Copeland, Big Woods, and into southern Cecil County as well. And then also a little batch from Dayton to Cooksville, south and west into White Oak and Greenbelt, and all the way into the D.C. Beltway, got about a solid up to about 1 inch to 2 inches of rain. Now, here in Baltimore, not as much. The Toyota HEN or Harbor Skycam going with 87. It is warm. It is sticky. Winds out of the west-southwest is 6. Ugh, look at that heat index. 93 degrees. A good day to be out there on one of the tall ships in the water. And really area-wide, not a whole lot of relief. Temperature at 95 right now. Westminster 91 at Frederick, 87 in Baltimore. Temperatures in the mid to upper 80s also on the eastern shore. Add in the heat index. This is a combination between the temperature as well as the humidity. Feels like 93 in Baltimore. Feels more like 100 at Denton. And still feels like 94 at Chestertown, 97 at Westminster. So if you're not getting rain, you're getting the heat. And that's kind of the situation here. It's July, and it feels like it, that's for sure. Humidity remains, spot shower or storm. A couple of weak systems around, but the next bigger weather maker is way up there toward Canada and just over portions of the Intermountain West as well as the Great Plains. Way north there. It's still a few hundred miles away, but I think by Sunday that will be getting here with an increased chance of some rain and storms, and that may take the temperatures finally, after about 7 days of 90-plus, back into the 80s. So take a look at the future scan by about 7:45 p.m. Not a whole lot going on here, just a couple of patchy clouds. Still going to be mild and muggy. Temperatures generally in the 80s overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning. Not a whole lot of hope here. Going to be in the 70s, so you're still going to be sticky. AC on, and for tomorrow noontime and beyond, there are those spot storms once again into about, say, maybe about 3 to 7 p.m., and then those gradually diminish as we work into the evening hours. And then the next 7 days, it's more of the same on Saturday. Highs in the 90s Friday and Saturday. Showers and storms increasing coverage on Sunday with that next weather maker. 86 on Monday, and then it looks like it could be another little mini heat wave that could work in towards the middle of next week.
Activists in Chicago are calling for change and demanding an investigation into the public school system there. It comes after several black principals have been fired. National Civil Rights Attorney Ben Crump joined leaders from the Chicago Principals and Administrators Association. They accused the school system there of discrimination, saying it's relying on false statements and unfairly targeting black leaders. Crump says that has a direct effect on how black students perform in schools.
And forever, we will speak up for black children. We will stand up for black children. And we will fight for our black children to be educated.
Well, parents and students in the communities where black principals were fired protested, demanding more answers. The CPS says it does not comment on personnel issues. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, the mayor doubles down on his support for the Safe Streets program. Fox 45 News presses him for answers on the program's effectiveness.
Americans increasingly moving to states that align with their political ideology. I'm Kayla Gaskins in Washington. Coming up, how this is impacting not just politics, but economics.
Trending right now, Americans are increasingly moving to states that align with their political views. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins reports from Washington.
Republicans moving to red states.
I mean, like the whole country wants to be here.
Democrats moving to blue states.
Happy Pride Month.
Some people just would rather be in environments where they are not constantly in conflict with the people who live closest to them.
Census data for 2022 shows Republican-led Texas and Florida gaining the most domestic migrants, while Democrat-controlled California and New York had the biggest losses.
The numbers that I've seen suggest that there is an outflow from blue states to red states.
Idaho also seeing an influx.
I'm from Austin, Minnesota.
Born and raised, Memphis, Tennessee.
Seattle, Washington.
Rounding out the top 10 states people are moving to.
It's really chill compared to Washington.
So far, I think the area is actually pretty beautiful. I love Boise.
My mom doesn't like to hear it, but yes. Yep, plan on staying for a while.
There's even a movement in conservative-leaning Eastern Oregon to redraw state lines, allowing them to join Idaho.
You have these two very different cultures in the state of Oregon that are sharing the same state and the same state government. And what that does is it causes friction, because as these two cultures are drifting further and further apart, they want less and less the same things.
The economic impacts, hard to miss. The Southeast has 6 of the fastest growing states, boosting the region's income by $100 billion for 2020 and 2021 alone. Meanwhile, the Northeast hemorrhaged $60 billion as people fled. The political consequences of migration also coming into focus.
The fallout is an even greater level of partisanship.
A single party has total control of the legislature in all but 2 states. With more people than ever able to work remotely and live where they choose, current migration patterns show no signs of slowing. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, after multiple mass shootings this week, some lawmakers are demanding change. Why the state Senate minority leader says he believes the legislature was too slow to act on crime policies. And a city council member says the police department's response to the Brooklyn shooting was unacceptable. We'll talk with Mark Conway about a possible hearing.
The mayor is doubling down as the city council prepares for a hearing next week, pressing leaders for answers on what Safe Streets workers were doing ahead of a mass shooting in Brooklyn this weekend.
Do special sessions actually work? We'll take a look at how they're being used across the country to see if one here could help Maryland's crime fight.
And a live look at the Inner Harbor as the state health department issues a heat warning, the latest on the extreme heat and chances for rain tonight.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
In the aftermath of this weekend's mass shooting, Mayor Brandon Scott is standing behind the Safe Streets program. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Fox 45 News continues to press city and state leaders for answers on what led up to Sunday's tragedy, who was aware of the Brooklyn gathering and when, and what's being done to stop another tragedy.
Here's what we know right now. 2 people were killed. Another 28 were shot. We are told police did know about the large crowd at least an hour and a half before the shooting, but the city says it wasn't aware of the event in the days leading up to it. Tonight, police are looking for multiple suspects, but so far haven't made any arrests.
Is that acceptable for BPD not to do something when they knew about this at least an hour and a half before something happened?
Absolutely unacceptable. If our department knew about it around 11 o'clock and this happened, a little after midnight, we had an hour and a half, 2 hours to figure out what we were going to do. Why did nothing happen?
Councilman Mark Conway says that he wants to know how the police department didn't know about the Brooklyn Day event in advance.
It is just one of the many questions he says he will ask next week during a hearing he called.
Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost joins us live in studio with what Conway is saying about Safe Streets' role and how the mayor is responding. Mackenzie?
Well, Kai and Mary, 4 Safe Streets workers we know were at the block party during the afternoon. They were there because apparently there were reports of multiple people with weapons. Safe Streets workers ended up mediating a handful of conflicts, but then left the event. The mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement will not tell us what time those workers left, but now an internal review of the policies for alerting other agencies, potentially the police department, now under review. Despite the fact that Safe Streets workers were at the block party hours before 30 people were shot and 2 of them died, the mayor refusing to back off support for the gun violence prevention program.
Everyone wants to scrutinize every second of what happened out there, which is exactly what me and my team are doing.
Do you still believe that Safe Streets is effective?
We know Safe Streets is effective, right?
After this, how can you say that?
Well, I could say many things after this. When you have an event like this, right, we don't say that the U.S. military is ineffective because 9/11 happens. So when you say, somebody decides to go and blow up a building, and then we say, well, we must get rid of all of our federal intelligence agencies because this happened. That's just an idiotic way of thinking, and we're going to continue to support it because it works.
Now, the mayor continues to point to the latest report from Johns Hopkins showing some improvement in the Safe Streets areas, but the report says there isn't success being seen everywhere, and also the city paid for that report in the first place. Meanwhile, just last week, the city approved millions in more taxpayer dollars to go towards the Safe Streets program. And with his upcoming hearing next week, I asked Councilman Mark Conway about the future of the program. Is it appropriate to be handing out this much money to an organization that doesn't clearly have their organization in place?
I think that's an excellent question. I think I'd have to really begin to dig more into the full scale of what's going on with Safe Streets to answer that question more knowledgeably.
Now, there's more from the mayor as well as the councilman. We'll have a full report coming up at 10. We're live in the studio. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. This brings us to our question of the day. Do you believe Safe Streets is an effective tool in curbing crime in Baltimore? So far, 100% of those who voted say no. You can weigh in right now at foxbaltimore.com/vote.
Going after legally possessed firearms, permitted firearms. We've seen them go after law enforcement officers. We haven't seen them do anything to go against the violent criminals that are in our communities.
Those words directed at Democratic lawmakers from Maryland's Republican Senate Minority Leader Steve Hershey. Hershey says in the wake of 2 mass shootings this week in Maryland, Marylanders don't want to hear more condolences. They want to see action. Fox 45's Amy Simpson joins us live right now. And Amy, what does this Republican leader say needs to happen now?
Kai, the Senate Minority Leader says it's time for lawmakers to get back to Annapolis for a special session, specifically pointing to 2 pieces of legislation that he says need to be passed now. Separated by more than 100 miles, 2 Maryland mass shootings this week, one in Baltimore, another in Salisbury, now sparking calls for action in Annapolis.
This doesn't have to be partisan.
After Sunday's mass shooting in South Baltimore, which left 2 dead and 28 injured, Senate Minority Leader Steve Hershey taking to Twitter. Elected leaders are talking about root causes. He said in part, Marylanders deserve to know our leaders believe this is an immediate crisis.
The immediate thoughts and prayers and the condolences and the heartfelt expressions that come out from our elected leaders, but nothing that comes out that says we are going to do something about this immediately.
Upon written request. Today, Hershey pointing to 2 pieces of legislation that could make an impact now.
There should be outrage from the community against their elected officials on why these types of bills are not moving forward.
Over the last 4 years, he says the Violent Firearms Offender Act, which would put repeat criminals behind bars, only passed the Senate twice, dying in committee the other 2 times. And a bill that would make possession of a stolen firearm a felony in Maryland, he says never made it out of committee 4 years in a row.
But the fact that we can't even get these bills a vote in the Judicial Proceedings Committee is telling us that people don't want to fix these problems.
This lawmaker very bluntly saying there needs to be consequences. Hershey pointing to cases where juveniles are not being charged as adults or adults not facing jail time after committing a crime.
There are simply a number of legislators that do not want to see young Black individuals going to jail anymore. And I can understand where they're coming from, but they have to measure that with keeping their communities safe.
Today, we asked Senate President Bill Ferguson's office if Ferguson supports a special session to address gun violence.
I'll call on the Senate President as well, too. We have to do something.
And what legislation he thinks needs to be passed. But those questions for the Senate President were not answered.
The governor very easily can say, I want to see these 2 pieces of legislation on my desk. He's got that type of power in the state of Maryland when he's got control of both the House and the Senate to be able to make that kind of statement. And that's what I'm looking forward to hearing from the governor.
And at least 3 times this week, Fox 45 News asked the office of Governor Wes Moore if the governor will call a special session to address gun violence, but each time, no response. We're live in Baltimore. Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Amy, thank you. Meanwhile, lawmakers in our state continue to call for change, with some demanding the governor call a special session to address crime and gun violence.
Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor looks into where the tool is currently being used and if special sessions across the nation are actually making an impact. Rebecca.
Yeah, in the last year alone, more states have gone back to work outside of their regular sessions than haven't. According to Fox 45's research team, 30 out of 50 states have held a special or extraordinary session in the last year. For example, in Washington, lawmakers passing laws strengthening restrictions and penalties for illegal drug possessions, as well as establishing new treatment options for those struggling with addiction. In Pennsylvania, lawmakers extending the statute of limitations on sexual assault cases. In Idaho, lawmakers producing the largest tax cut in state history, while also increasing funding for education. And in South Carolina, lawmakers criminalizing fentanyl trafficking with added gun penalties. All solutions discussed and delivered outside of normal legislative sessions. This as Maryland's Capitol remains closed for the summer, a decision political analysts I spoke with are critical of.
This has reached a level of crisis where Annapolis should come back into session and do something about it.
They just don't want their summer vacation interrupted. That's what it comes down to, because there are things and actions they could consider taking on a variety of things.
Now, if no special session is called, Maryland lawmakers will have to wait until the next regular session to pose or introduce new safety measures or proposals. But that is about 6 months away. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
There's already been some indication Marylanders would support legislation cracking down on gun crime. According to the results of a Gonzales poll released last month, Marylanders would support state lawmakers passing a bill increasing the severity of penalties for people with illegal guns. The poll found out of all voters, Democrats and Republicans, 89% want possession of a stolen firearm to be a felony. The poll's operator says that question had by far the most bipartisan support of any question in recent memory.
Well, taking a live look outside tonight, while it's been a mostly hot and sunny day in Baltimore, parts of our area are dealing with some rain tonight. Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers in now with the latest on what we can expect. Looks a little hazy out there.
Yeah, a little haze and a lot of heat, and temperatures are going to stay in the 90s the next couple of days, even though we've got a risk of some showers and storms Just like we've seen the past few days, it's time to certainly take those heat tips into consideration. Make sure you drink lots of water, take lots of breaks. Even if you get a cell here or there, like you're seeing down around Salisbury and Seaford, around Easton earlier, and even yesterday had some around Baltimore, but not today. You're still seeing the heat. Temperature at 87 in Baltimore, 88. Real summery at Cockeysville. Good time to spend some time by the pool. At Westminster and Frederick, going to be in the low 90s if you're headed outside there. Temperatures feeling more like about 95 to 100 degrees. And even overnight by 7 p.m., not a whole lot of relief. Feeling like 90 degrees. 7 p.m. temperature at about 84. Could still see a spot storm, but I think by 10 p.m., that's all out of here. And then it's just mild and muggy, and it's going to stay warm and sticky as we head through the next several days. I'm going to let you know we'll finally fall out of the 90s. May take some time. That's coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
A heat advisory is in Maryland tonight. The health department is warning this week's prolonged high temperatures puts you at risk. Now, there are some basic steps to avoid everything from cramping to heat stroke. The health department says Marylanders should stay hydrated, avoid alcohol, caffeine, and sugar, wear sunscreen, and stay in the shade when possible.
And you can put the power of the Weather Authority Storm Center in your hands. Download the free WBFF Weather Authority app for your smartphone. For the latest on the summer heat and possible storms in your area, just go to the App Store, search WBFF to get started.
Police scanners are getting set back. Why BPD is delaying its transmissions to the public starting today.
Someone is setting Baltimore playgrounds on fire, the latest in a string of incidents and whether they're connected.
Another not guilty plea stemming from the Donald Trump document investigation. The latest developments with one of his aides in court.
Fox 45 News, winner of 16 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
Donald Trump's aide, Walt Nauta, appeared in federal court today in Florida. He pleaded not guilty to 6 counts, including obstruction and concealment-related charges for the alleged mishandling of classified documents. He also requested a jury trial. Nauta served as a military valet in the White House and traveled with Trump when he left office. He eventually took the role of Trump's personal aide. Nauta's arraignment comes nearly a month after he and Trump were first indicted.
Americans may disagree on whether or not former President Trump broke the law when he took classified documents from the White House to his Mar-a-Lago home, but most of them want a fair and speedy trial. According to a new poll by Politico magazine, 62% of Americans think the trial should take place before the presidential election next November. That includes 46% of Republicans, 86% of Democrats, and 48% of independents.
If it wasn't for your vote, we would not have Joe Biden in the White House.
Republican presidential candidate Mike Pence pressed by voters today on his refusal to reject the results of the 2020 presidential election. The exchange happened during a meeting with voters in Iowa. The former VP saying he had no right to deny the will of the voters.
The Constitution affords no authority for the vice president or anyone else to reject votes or return votes to the states. Never been done before, should never be done in the future. I'm sorry, ma'am, but that's actually what the Constitution says.
Pence went on to say that despite repeated claims from former President Trump that he could have sent the electoral votes back, that is simply not a power the vice president has ever had.
The Earth's average temperature remained at a record high for a third day in a row. The average global temperature was 62.9 degrees Fahrenheit on Wednesday, according to the University of Maine. The previous record of 62.6 was set on Monday. NOAA officials said that roughly 38 million Americans were under some sort of heat alert on yesterday. And that hot weather continues today in the Baltimore area. This is a live look at the Inner Harbor, also Towson. Along with the heat, there is some scattered showers out there across the state. Meteorologist Jonathan Myers is here with what we can expect later.
What would it be a day without a rain shower? Yeah. We're sort of used to that now, I think.
And that high heat that we're seeing, too. Now, we don't have the record heat like we're seeing on that global average that we're talking about here with some of these reports, but it's these above average temperatures that get worked into that kind of global climate temperature shift that we've been talking about. And yes, our temperatures are above average. It's only by about 2, 3, 4 degrees, but you do that on a global average, and that's where you start getting into the problems. HD radar right now, you see in Baltimore to Hampstead to Bel Air, things nice and quiet, although there are a few showers that are way down around Seaford and Delmar. Those continue to shift away. So that's some great news for the afternoon commute. Not some great news if you want to have some cooler weather. Temperatures are soaring once again as the showers and storms have cut off. Temperatures in the 80s to around 90 with earlier this afternoon, about 1 to 2 inches, maybe even 3 inches of rain over the northern and eastern shore. This is the stuff that was over Baltimore yesterday. Now it's kind of recentered. And then there's some stuff that kind of fired from Eldersburg down south and west toward Elk Ridge, and down the 95 corridor got about an inch of rain out of some of the cells there. And how about this? Even after the rain that we've seen, we need more, and we need a lot more. Still running a severe drought. Now it's just shifted a little bit west of Baltimore City, basically right around the Beltway and points north and west. But still, a severe drought is in place for portions of our area, and we need more rain. And it looks like there's at least some in the 7-day forecast, especially as we head towards the second half of this weekend. Temperatures all across the area in the mid-80s to right around 90. We did, again, have some of the spot showers earlier to help cool us a little bit. But 93 at Westminster, 91 at Frederick. Didn't see a whole lot of rain there. Still feels like 99 at Westminster. Good afternoon, good evening for the pool. 100 at Cockeysville. Stay hydrated and drink plenty of water here, too. At Denton, feels like 100 degrees. The blazing sun has come back out on our traffic camera network. You see here, this is the northern side of the Beltway, 695 right around Towson. We're at 87, winds out of the southwest at 3. With that dew point at about 70 degrees, You add in the heat, you add the humidity, and that's when it becomes absolutely stifling. That's when it feels more like 90 to 100 degrees across the area. Weather map right now, not a whole lot of systems around to really spark widespread showers and storms, but notice up towards the Canadian border, there's the next one, and that's going to be the next weather maker, I think, that gets here by Sunday to potentially provide us with a better risk of some showers and storms for your outdoor plans. For the rest of this afternoon and this evening, there's not much here. There could be an isolated pop-up shower or storm through sunset. After that, I think it's just warm and muggy again into tomorrow morning. By lunchtime tomorrow, we're back well into the 80s, and just like clockwork, at about 3 p.m., there are your spot showers and storms. Time it out to 4:45, up and down the 83, 97, 95 corridor. Isolated storms, more through about 6 p.m., about 30-40% chance you'll see those, and then those diminish again, only to come back likely on Saturday with high temperatures. Now, this is going to be what, day 6, day 7 of 90+. We made it to 90 today, 91 Friday, 91 Saturday. Better risk of some showers and thunderstorms on Sunday. That should take us back into the 80s. So outdoor plans better on Saturday, I think. Maybe some more 80s and somewhat less humidity on Monday, but don't get used to it. Back to the 90s by the middle of next week.
Are kids safe at playgrounds? Hearing from a concerned parent and member of the community after a series of fires at Baltimore playgrounds. Cracking down on a Maryland pharmacy, why federal officials say it was helping fuel the opioid epidemic.
Time is running out for UPS and its workers to reach a deal on a new contract. I'm Atrel Nashar with a look at the impact of what could be one of the biggest strikes this country's ever seen.
Making headlines, the Pentagon is warning against overcorrecting when it comes to sharing top secret information. The review was in response to a low-ranking National Guard member being accused of sharing intelligence online. Pentagon officials say despite that breach, there's no need for major changes to security protocols. This despite lawmakers urging a major shakeup. The alleged leaker was indicted last month and has pleaded not guilty. Well, we could soon see the largest single employer strike in American history. UPS and the Teamsters Union are running out of time to negotiate a contract impacting more than 340,000 employees. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar reports on how this could affect an economy already poised for a slowdown.
A stalemate between UPS and the Teamsters Union could soon send a shock through the U.S. economy. It would be the first company strike in 25 years, with the potential to upend 6% of U.S. GDP that moves on UPS trucks, affecting individual customers and supply chains across industries, which could add to inflation and product shortages. The company accuses the union of walking away from the negotiating table. The union says UPS refuses to give.
Our part-timers are the unsung heroes. They are working for poverty wages, and we need to drive up the starting rates of pay.
The current contract expires July 31st, but Teamsters says their members need time before then to review a new agreement, one that doesn't even exist yet, and as of Thursday, no further talks are scheduled.
It's an especially tough time for this kind of disruption because staff economists at the Federal Reserve are predicting economic activity will slow into next year. What's still up in the air, though, is whether there will be a recession and what one would look like.
Fed economists still say there's likely to be a short, mild recession later this year. But given resilience in the labor market and consumer spending, now they say it's almost just as likely a recession will be avoided, according to Fed meeting minutes released this week. On a Bidenomics tour stop Thursday in South Carolina, President Biden lauding job growth as the latest ADP private payroll report shows almost 500,000 jobs added in June, more than double of what was expected.
Unemployment been below 4% for the longest time in 50 years.
Consumer-facing industries like leisure and hospitality lead the job gains, according to ADP. The biggest losses were in manufacturing, a sector central to the White House's Bidenomics push. Economists now bracing for the next big gauge of the U.S. economy in the government's June jobs report out Friday morning. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
A curfew center closing down before the curfew even begins. Why a local government accountability group says the mayor has to reevaluate his youth crime plans. Who's behind a string of playground fires? Fox 45 News pressing public safety officials as community members say they are scared for kids in their neighborhood. Will it protect officers or keep critical information from the public? The concerns over a new BPD policy encrypting their radio transmissions.
Beginning today, the Baltimore Police Department is now encrypting and delaying public access to its radio transmissions.
Alexa Ashwell explains why the department says it is making this move and the concerns some have with this change.
He's shooting. It was just last week when a deadly officer-involved shooting unfolded live over the Baltimore Police Department's radio airwaves. Stop the crossfire now! Real-time access the public will no longer have. After years of talks, the Baltimore Police Department has officially switched to encrypted radio systems and devices. Instead of listening live, the public will only be able to access audio streams on a 15-minute delay and through the online platform Broadcastify. The Baltimore Police Department, writing in part, Broadcastify presents us with the opportunity to focus on officer safety. It also assists with interagency operability, since many neighboring agencies are already under encryption. Concerns center around transparency and right to real-time access, not only by the press, but general public as well. Number one female shot in the left leg. They need some units here. I need medics here. Just days ago, gunfire erupted within a crowd of hundreds of people, sending them running for their lives during the Brooklyn Day Festival in South Baltimore. 30 people were shot, 2 of those victims killed. The Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press here discussing the topic, writing in part, the debate over police radio encryption shows how technology is relevant to First Amendment questions. Former Baltimore Police Deputy Commissioner Jason Johnson weighing in.
But I think this policy does balance the need for openness and transparency with the need to protect victims, witnesses, police officers, and others that would be, potentially harmed and are potentially harmed by the real-time nature of police communications.
Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Now, the change comes as we continue to investigate the response to that Brooklyn mass shooting over the weekend. Leading up to the shooting, over police radio, Foxtrot was heard saying that there were more than 900 people in the area and that officers should stay away from the scene. By the time officers did arrive, 30 people had been shot. Former Baltimore Police Commissioner Ed Norris spoke with Fox 45's Tom Rogers, explaining why officers initially held off in their response and how this was allowed to happen in the first place.
Oh, because you'd probably have to wait for a whole lot of backup. You're going to confront 1,000 armed people. I mean, you don't get paid to commit suicide. This is a byproduct of the policing in the last couple of years, where how in the world did, if it's true, 900 to 1,000 people who are armed congregate in one spot and were never confronted by the police? Because you can't. Because if you see 10, 20, they didn't come one at a time. I'm sure they came in big groups, and police are not even allowed to confront people anymore. This is what you get.
Well, Norris went on to say if more officers were in the area to interact with the crowd during the non-permitted party, things may have gone very differently.
A video circulating on social media from the Brooklyn shooting seems to show a teen pulling a gun from his backpack during the party. The clip is feeding into the continued debate statewide over youth access to firearms and juvenile crime. The mayor calling attention to the video, saying parents and adults in the community need to step up to keep kids safe.
There were grown adults filming young people with guns who said nothing, who did nothing, who didn't say to the police, hey, I know this teenager's out here at this event with a gun. And we have to have a sense of responsibility to our own community as well.
Well, police are looking for multiple suspects connected to the mass shooting, though they have not yet identified anyone or said exactly how many people they're looking for.
As the mass shooting renews concerns over youth violence in Baltimore, there are concerns the mayor's youth curfew plan may not be working. The city put youth connection centers in place to be a space youth could agree to be taken to during those curfew hours, while the volunteers then attempted to locate their parents. Just 6 weeks into the effort, one of the connection centers is closed, and the one that's still open in Park Heights has been shutting down hours early, sometimes even before the curfew goes into effect. Earlier today, we spoke to the spokesperson for the Baltimore accountability group, Peace.
There needs to be a real practical assessment about what young people in Baltimore City need, the direction that they need. And if there are those missing parents or those missing guardians, then figuring out where the juvenile system is failing, where we can help, where the school system can help, but also keeping in mind that, the mayor is in charge of keeping the public peace, and he is clearly not doing that. And so we need to reevaluate whether these policies are working.
The youth violence crisis is not unique to Baltimore. It's an issue communities are facing statewide. Today, Brad Bell from our Sinclair sister station in Washington, D.C., spoke with a group of juvenile offenders about what led them to commit the crimes they did.
We can't show you their faces, but each of the dozen teenagers in this room has been ordered here by a court. They've committed violent crimes. Many have been locked up as juveniles and now are in community programs like this one called Jacob's Ladder. It's run by former Prince George's County Police Lieutenant Darrell Jordan. Today, we're invited into their discussion session.
Embrace this, okay? They are pouring into you all's life.
The teens are at first reluctant to speak, but eventually open up to our questions. Themes emerge. Most skipped school. They say guns are easy to get. They say they don't like being told what to do, and yet they wish they had more positive influences in their lives. This 15-year-old says he lacks parenting.
I ain't had no father for real either, so I was looking up to my older people outside, getting influenced at a young age.
Brad Bell, Fox 45 News.
Some new information now after a fire damaged a playground in southeast Baltimore last night. It is the third such fire in the past 3 weeks, and tonight some are questioning if they are linked. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker has the story.
The first playground fire happened here last month at an elementary school playground in Park Heights. The second fire happening here 2 days later at this West Baltimore playground. And just last night here at Holabird Academy in O'Donnell Heights, a third playground was set ablaze.
The block is nice and quiet.
John England was surprised to find his block in Park Heights a little less quiet than normal last month.
I came home from work. My wife had told me that the next day that, the playground, somebody had set the playground on fire.
Just across the street from his home at the now shuttered Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary Middle School is what remains of this children's playground. Burnt plastic slides, the smell still lingering in the air.
Well, I heard everybody else. These kids go out here and play on it all the time. People come and drop their car off and have their kids play in the playground in the area up here. It's ridiculous they had to burn it down like that.
Pictures from June 19th show heavy black smoke and flames erupting from the playground. Police say the fire is being investigated as arson after it was found to be intentionally set with wooden pallets placed underneath the jungle gym.
The pallets was around the playground area. They was all round up in a line, you know what I'm saying? And they must have put the pallets there, set the pallets on fire, and they got to the plastic.
2 days later, on June 21st, the Wilbur H. Playground fell victim to fire in West Baltimore.
Somebody jealous, mad, upset about something, I mean, 'cause it doesn't make no sense for them to do nothing like that, you know what I'm saying?
And just last night at Holabird Academy, a third playground was struck by fire. Video shows the heavy black smoke and firefighters on scene extinguishing the flames. For now, police say only the first fire is being investigated as arson. However, detectives are actively investigating if the 3 incidents are linked.
That's bad. That's ridiculous. I hope they catch the person whoever's doing them. I don't know if they just ride around the area, just setting playgrounds on fire or what, you know what I'm saying? But I don't think nobody in this neighborhood done that.
Meantime, John is left hoping the playground on his street is replaced so children can enjoy it once again.
The city going to repair it or what? I know they're probably sick of it, you know what I'm saying, because this is the second time. That's taxpayers' money.
In Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
A consent decree has been approved for a Maryland pharmacy after it was said to have filled illegitimate prescriptions. According to the state's attorney's office, Beckman's Pharmacy in Cumberland and Western Maryland disregarded signs prescriptions had been falsified, including improper dosages and combinations of drugs that could increase the chance of overdose. The pharmacy will have to pay $120,000 in fines and is required to better identify red flags on prescriptions in the future.
Well, Maryland's Attorney General is joining a nationwide effort to push back on legal challenges to California's emissions standards. California's policy puts tougher regulations on trucks and other large vehicles with the goal of eventually reaching net zero emissions. Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown says Maryland's emissions plans are rooted in California's efforts to fight climate change, and protecting the legality of what's happening there will be critical in keeping Maryland's climate goals on track.
Political and community leaders in Baltimore gather at City Hall to unveil a new portrait of Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. Justice Marshall was born in West Baltimore in 1908 and became the Supreme Court's first African-American justice in 1967.
Many of us can relate to the humble beginnings of Thurgood Marshall, but it is a testament to the fact that one person's life can inspire generations of leaders and advocates who have the same courage and the same fierce determination to stand up and speak out about injustices in our society and dedicate their lives to a cause that will change the lives of so many others.
Thurgood Marshall was also the architect of the